Hey class, it's Mr. Parrish here, and I wanted to give you a little heads up before we start. There's going to be a few times when you need to pause the recording to write some stuff down. I understand that. Feel free to, back up and pause through different parts. As this is an individual work, you're gonna want to do that. You're gonna want to pause because I'm gonna go through some of this rather fast. As normally when I'm doing notes, I will go at a pace and then use like visual cues, see you working and see when to go on. But I can't do that because this is a recording. So today we're gonna do Renaissance art, which is gonna be the next letter, which I think is I think our last one was G. So you have G, H. No, we did H. H was the last one. So this will be I. This will be letter I. And you can just put Renaissance art, and it's going to be a big one. And there's going to be several IDs in this one. So I just want to start by looking at one thing. You don't have to write anything down here, but I want you to take a look at two things here. One is this picture on the left, this painting on the left. This is an example of medieval art. And you can see it's very flat. There's not a lot of depth, and it is religious in nature. It is the crucifixion, and the people in here are pretty much indiscernible besides who they are. So you see like Christ on the cross, and you see people looking up at him and weeping and all that. And then we look over here at the right. This is by a painter named Titian, and it's a lot better. All right, sorry I got this little thing in here. I didn't mean to do that, but it's a lot better painting. The painting shows a lot of depth. The painting is realistic. It you know exactly who the people are in there with the Gospels and all that. So with that, we're going to begin just kind of showing you how much art advanced, and we're going to look at some artists and their paintings today. So we're going to start with a guy named Raphael. And Raphael was a Florentine painter, meaning he was from Florence, Italy, and he lived from 1483 to 1520. And if you look at those dates, he didn't live very long. He only lived to be 37 years old. And, to be renowned and known as one of the greatest of all time is pretty amazing considering he was only 37 years old. But this is a painting of Raphael. He painted himself into a couple paintings. That's how we know. And a couple things I want you to know about Raphael is that he painted it with a very animated style. All right, the style that he used is very animated, not in like cartoony, but more of like I want to say like they tend to come alive, like the pictures they do, and or the paintings they come alive, and also he uses light very well. All right, he's a painter that is a master of the use of light. And the first one we're going to look at is called The School of Athens. And The School of Athens is a painting that was done between the years of 1509 to 1511. And sometimes you'll see paintings that are like this, where it's there's a gap there, and we're not sure if he started and then picked up somewhere, but remember, like these artists back then, they weren't necessarily painting nonstop, and a lot of times they would be paid to do other things while they were painting. So but School of Athens is from 1509 to 1511, and it is beautiful. It is this painting right here. And the first thing you should note about this painting is that it screams of classicism. So here we have School of Athens, Athens being the Greek city, and this being back in the times of the ancient Greeks. And you see all these dudes here in the painting, right? and the painting itself is centered on these two guys here. This is Aristotle and Plato. All right, and a lot of people think that this guy here, that Raphael actually painted Da Vinci as Aristotle, and these are all famous people, by the way. These are all like people who are famous in one field of study or another. And what's interesting here is this side of the painting is all kind of liberal arts. So it's things like literature and music and oratory, which would be speaking. And in this side of the room is all like hard sciences. So you have things like astronomy and algebra and a lot of different stuff going on in this painting. And this guy right here, I know this is kind of blurry, but this guy right here, this is Raphael. He painted himself into this painting. But you see, yesterday we talked about in class, we talked about like how they used geometric shapes and how they used, like the architectural style of the Renaissance was based on that of the ancient Romans and Greeks, and they used geometric shapes in the Renaissance architecture, and here you see a lot of that as well. The second painting by Raphael we're going to look at is called The Marriage of the Virgin, and it's going to illustrate one of the most important things that the Renaissance introduces to us in the way of art, and that is perspective. All right, so the word perspective, which is an artistic tool used to create depth. Okay, so that's what perspective is, an artistic tool used to create depth. And here's the painting itself. And the painting, like we said, is called The Marriage of the Virgin. And so we see a wedding ceremony here with these guys down here. And I'm not sure what this guy's doing. He's breaking something. But they're all, very engaged here at the wedding. Everyone's super happy, it looks like. Actually not, they don't look happy at all. Maybe this marriage was a surprise. But anyway, what you really want to look at here is not so much the people in the foreground. It is the background, because the background here, it looks like it's in the distance. And that is an artistic tool known as perspective. So what Raphael did here is he created lines that go to a certain point here. And I'm sure you guys have all learned this in like 6th grade art or something. But this is a good example of it, these lines that go to this point. And then the horizon also goes to this point right here, and that's called the vanishing point. So all this down here kind of looks up to it, and everything here kind of looks down to it. So these people that are painted right above their heads look like they're far away, even though they're not. So even though this is a flat painting. So this is a good use of perspective here in Raphael's kind of, very pedestrian painting here. But if we didn't have this great use of perspective, this would be just kind of a boring painting. This one is not boring. This is called the Sistine Madonna. And this name right here, Madonna, this is the name that is given for the Virgin Mary. So whenever you see the name Madonna, that's who that's referring to, is the Virgin Mary. And the Virgin Mary is a very often used person in Renaissance paintings, as the church still has a huge influence. So this painting was done in 1512, and Raphael gives us a new technique in this painting, and it's called imaginary perspective. Okay? Imaginary perspective. And what he had is he had a really tight, you can't see me, but I'm holding my hands like perpendicular to each other. He had a really tight area to work with here. So it's like, a very tall area, but not a lot of width. And in order to create depth, a lot of times you need that width. And so what he did is he painted these curtains here. He painted this rod here and these curtains. And it's supposed to be like curtains being pulled back to show a scene. And what we see here in the middle is the Virgin Mary holding the baby Jesus on a bed of clouds. And here we have St. Peter here. And I'm not sure who this figure is. But this is a very famous painting for a few reasons. One is the technique called imaginary perspective. And the other are these little guys down here at the bottom. And these guys, these angels, are one of the most famous pieces of Renaissance art just because they're kind of cute. And you see them a lot on not greeting cards, but like cards. I guess those are greeting cards. At one of my favorite Italian restaurants, there's a painting of these guys, like a print of these right next to the bathroom. So these guys are used a lot in like popular culture, in looking at like classic Renaissance art. But that's not the coolest part of this painting. And I want you to really look at something, because I said earlier that Raphael used light. And in using light here, he creates a glow around the Madonna and the baby Jesus and St. Peter. And it all kind of evaporates here into these clouds. But the really cool part about this painting is not the light, but the dark. So if we look at the darkness that is around, especially the Madonna and St. Peter, we see these faces here, okay? So if you look really close, you can see these faces, and these are the souls of heaven. So he gets really in depth here. And take a look back at the original painting here, and now that you see it, it kind of jumps out at you, especially over here on this side, and then up here at the top. But he's on another level. I mean, he's not just, painting faces. Another thing is, Raphael, all his faces are really round. That's another thing too, is he is kind of like, that's the Raphael style. And so his kind of round features and all of that is really cool. But Raphael, man, he's fantastic. We're going to get to one more before we go to part 2 here. And this next painter is named Donatello. And I lied. He's not a painter. He's actually a sculptor. But Donatello, much earlier than Raphael, he was born in 1386 and he dies in 1466. And they talked about him a little bit in the, oh wow, the Cubs just scored. Awesome. All right. So Donatello, we talked about him a little bit in the video there, but he is a sculptor and he works in bronze. And his most famous thing is the David. And David is, and it took him 10 years to complete this David sculpture. And David being David, the king of the Philistines there. And he is of David and Goliath fame. But here we have his sculpture of David, a victorious David after his defeat of Goliath. And you can see his foot is on Goliath's head. All right, so there's a lot going on here in this painting. It is a nude painting. I keep saying painting. I'm sorry, sculpture. A lot going on here in this sculpture. And one thing he did is he used bronze. And he's not classically trained. He's not someone who's like goes to art school. He actually was trained by his father, who was a stonemason, on how to work with marble and with bronze and all that. So he is another of our Renaissance artists. This is the only thing we're going to look at with him, but he notice how the light kind of glances off of his body, and that's really important because it makes it stand out. And so this depiction of David, we're going to look at one more David here later, but this depiction of David shows a more youthful, victorious David. So I'm going to stop here, and we're going to go on to part 2, and we're going to look at a few more painters.